So I was born in Tallinn, Estonia. My parents are Ukrainian. I spent most of my life here in Estonia, but when I was age 3, my dad took me to Ukraine illegally. None of my relatives from my mom's side knew where I was going. It wasn't stressful, I would say. It was more like an adventurous time to live in a very different place from a very young age, traveling around. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania were able to import a lot of different shows and series from abroad, mainly America. So I would watch a lot of Cartoon Network, a lot of German cartoons especially. They were mostly actually American, but just dubbed into German language, and we had a lot of German channels at the time. I would say Cartoon Network was my first biggest influence since 1993 or 4. I would watch religiously all the cartoons on a daily basis, like the classics of Hanna-Barbera, Looney Tunes, and later on when the original Cartoon Network shows started to air, such as Dexter's Lab, which was probably my favorite, mainly because also it was made by a Russian director, 𝒜𝓃𝒾𝓂𝒶𝓉𝑜𝓇. That was a huge breaking point to see this as a chance that anyone, doesn't matter where you live, you can make your own cartoons, because at the time when the Soviet Union collapsed, I was thinking that all of this stuff can only be done by Americans in America.
Another animated show that was a big influence on me was Ed, Edd n Eddy. The mix of typical childhood world with cartoony slapstick and lots of very real characters was another sign to become an animator one day.
Another very inspirational cartoon was Courage the Cowardly Dog by John R. Dilworth. I would say that his style and his execution of storytelling was very, very different from anything I've seen on Cartoon Network at the time. And I would say that yes, he is also a big influence on me. In terms of the main character, Courage the Cowardly Dog, who is very, very anxious.
𝒃𝓃.
Holding this signature I got from 𝒜𝓃𝒾𝓂𝒶𝓉𝑜𝓇, the creator of Dexter's Lab. So I met him in the Festival of Animation in France in 2015. He was kind enough to draw me a little Dexter here next to Anton, and I hold this dearly to this very day. And then I also got the little signature from, and art of course, from John R. Dilworth, the creator of Courage the Cowardly Dog. And as you can see here, he drew the Mr. Freaky Fred next to my character, Mr. Freaks here, shaking hands, as a perfect duo, I would say. If they were to be animated one day, I think they'll be perfect. Here we have an art piece from Butch Hartman, the creator of Fairly Odd Parents. He drew this wonderful little Mr. Freaks character holding a burning white flag. I would say yes, I'm quite anxious, but I don't usually let it show to other people, I guess. Video games have been a big part of my life ever since I was little. When you watch a cartoon and when you play a 2D game, obviously there's two different things, but you can learn more when you play the game with a 2D sprite-based animation, because you watch a lot of the same cycles of repeated animations. That usually sticks with you longer if you want to then animate the same action later on. So I would say video games have been very, very influential in teaching me how to animate. Yes, the environment, I think, definitely influences me. When I was living in Japan, I was playing 𝒲𝑜𝓇𝒃. The English version is Elite Beat Agents. It's a game where you play as cheerleaders. They are agents, and they are sort of like superheroes, you can say. They come to anyone in need. Let's say a pupil is having a hard time studying for an exam. So he summons this cheerleading squad, and they crash into this pupil's house and start dancing in front of him to make sure that he gets the homework done and prepares himself properly for the exam. And this inspired me to create Cherry Cheers comic. And I wanted to have a twist on that by having this overweight, kind of fat, big cheerleader girl instead of the generic anime perfect body characters dancing around. I thought it would be funnier to have a big one. I actually managed to make about 100 pages of that comic, but I didn't color all of them. I only finished 30 pages maybe, which you can see on my blog. So I really like this specific manga because it destroys all the formulas and concepts of the generic manga. As you can see on the design, it looks, even the main character, quite abnormal next to generic anime girls with giant large eyes, no nose, and ooh look. I really admire this type of art, though I think we're not going to get anything like this anytime soon in the world of manga and animation. Look at these depictions of evil characters. They look Asian. They look authentically Asian, unlike the manga looks when they show European type faces everywhere on most characters. So I really love this type. Next one. That is probably the best example of animation lessons I've had in my life, because it teaches very fundamental lessons in a very simplistic style, where you can learn how to animate the most simplest of characters, the cartoony type characters, of course, in very circular shapes. And it tells you pretty much everything you need to know in a few words. This was a gift from my friend, and this has been probably the best gift I've ever gotten. One of the best gifts I've ever gotten. I recommend this to everyone who wants to study animation from scratch, who has no experience, who just wants to get up and go. Another book, I think, which is really good for any fan of animation, Hanna-Barbera shows up until the 1990s, I think. It doesn't really have the full history of Hanna-Barbera here, but it sure does cover a lot of it, with a lot of beautiful artwork, a lot of crisp, clean character art, and lots of backgrounds on how the shows were made, how they were created, who the voice actors were, what the songs were. These are the creators,
William Hanna and Joseph Barbera.
And they are known for creating Tom and Jerry, the Jetsons, Flintstones, Yogi Bear, and tons of other shows. And this book here, the one of Osamu Tezuka, this is just a character book from the various animation shows and features they were making in Japan. You can create your animation Bibles. They say if you want to pitch a show, you usually create an animation Bible, a pitch Bible, I guess you can say. So you just compile a bunch of designs of your characters and you show them to the studio. Here you can see a lot of the characters that were used in the feature films, and they were drawn from so many different angles, from all the different expressions as well. And this is valuable for the production team to know, because when they're going to animate them, they need to know exactly how everything will look. Here's Astro Boy, of course, the biggest star of Osamu Tezuka. This man created this comic book, which led to the anime series. And this basically was the kickstart of the anime revolution. You know, the productions in Japan became more and more advanced over time. They managed to export tons and tons of works from Japan to various different countries around the world. Usually much more limited in terms of using full frames. They use a lot less frames and a lot less details in the backgrounds and stuff. Over time, as we can see today, Japanese anime has pretty much conquered, I think, the West in terms of how fast they produce animation today, how many series they can export, how many manga shows they can adapt into animation. This is extremely mind-blowing compared to the Western formula, where it's a few shows per year. Japan can do a lot more and faster. When I was in America, I created the concept of the survival of the fetus in my first semester of my study abroad year. That's where I got the idea to create this game based on abortion and trying to survive the abortion. Because the US has such a divisive culture on this topic, I thought it would be really fun to experiment with this idea and create a character like a fetus, and you try to get the fetus through the 9 months before the birth.
Maybe. I have been busy with lots of other projects, so the game kinda got forgotten in the process. If I had a stable development team, things would be much easier. Again, it's difficult to focus on multiple projects at once, but this game has better chances being made than any of my other game projects. It's about addiction to the technology that leads to being creatively bankrupt. Technology has obviously benefits, but its usage is more often than not responsible for massive distraction from the present moment, which kills concentration and self-reflection. Phone Wreckers is about exploring connection between humans and tech, addiction and mental illness.
When I first started to make YouTube videos, I didn't actually plan to make a career out of it because it was very unpredictable at the time, and the animation scene was kind of dying. The algorithm pretty much killed a lot of animators. Many people sort of, I guess, dropped that dream to animate for YouTube because it's very difficult to make content for YouTube in animation that is over 8 minutes long. It takes a long time to produce something like this on a weekly basis even. Because it's just impossible to compete with someone who can make videos every day, like vloggers and let's players. And then later on, when I released the deathbed parody, that sort of became viral. Well, I would say the funeral one, the Sonic funeral, became viral. And I would focus more on parodies ever since then. That's how I kind of realized that YouTube prefers parodies. But in the end, I still tried to balance out with parodies and original work. The deathbed started in the time when I was playing some Sonic games, and this was, I guess, very also the time when I was kind of lost and depressed, and I thought that playing some new Sonic game would maybe cheer me up and be kind of nostalgic. And when I saw the latest games were horrible, they were making me even more depressed. I thought to kind of represent this idea, what it would be like if a character you used to like, they die. When I was studying abroad, I was not very happy with the way we were taught in the university. And so I ended up pretty much learning most of the things by myself and just by taking the books from the library, sitting at home and just practicing every single day. So I think anybody nowadays, with the help of the internet, can buy a book or maybe just watch a bunch of YouTube tutorials and understand how the software or the principles of animation work and just become animators themselves. Back in the day, before the internet, everybody would have to get a light box, a lot of specific paper. It would also require you to have a special kind of camera to scan all those frames. I really admire all the people now that are in their 60s or 50s who were animating at that time when the technology wasn't quite advanced. So I really respect those people who had to suffer through. Generally, if you want to study animation, I would say that the best place is to start is at home, and where you don't have much to lose. So you just buy something like a book and or a tablet, and you see if it's for you or not. And if you do enjoy it, then there's a lot of resources online. You just watch a bunch of channels, like a lesson every day, and you'll improve, because tons of people have been already proving that you can get really good just by animating at home. So the political correctness today, or the woke culture, as it is called, I would say is very harmful and toxic for the art industry and the media in general. So I would say the cultures that are pushing the narrative that white straight males are the cancer of the humanity are quite bad for the environment in general, and people will eventually probably get tired of this idea that all the movies have to involve some sort of like hyper-feminist main character who does no wrong, who is the Mary Sue of a film like Captain Marvel, or the latest Charlie's Angels movie, or the latest Terminator movie. All of them are products of very, very woke culture. The current woke politics of the mainstream media are taking charge quite fast, and they are already conquering a lot of channels like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney, and pretty much every mainstream channel you can think of, because they are quickly trying to spread this agenda that white males somehow are incapable of handling a difficult situation, that they are somehow toxic, that they portray a toxic masculinity, that they show a bad example to the kids, to the cultures around the world, that the straight white cis male is the boogeyman, let's say, of the modern woke world. It's quite bad, but also funny that you can actually see how predictable all the movies nowadays are. If you watched Captain Marvel or Charlie's Angels, the latest one, or the Dark Terminator, and the latest cartoons like the Steven Universe, Korra, or Infinity Train, everything from the last 5 years, I would say, falls in that category of being more or less woke and more or less pushing the progressive narrative so that it becomes disgenuine, because it's not very natural that we're showing these specific diverse characters on the screen, or LGBT people in the show. It's more to do with them shoving them by force, it seems, instead of having them naturally be depicted without any stereotypes attached to them. It's not organic at all, in a way. That is the problem. You know, you can have the entire show with LGBT characters, and you know, and it will be good. You know, if the storytelling is fine, if the characters are depicted in a natural way. It's very easy to poke at these elements and see the reactions of people who actually defend those shows, such as She-Ra or Korra or Steven Universe. And yeah, I would say it's sort of my, I guess, guilty pleasure to provoke these type of people and trigger them. I would say possibly, yes. His art wasn't accepted in the Austrian Institute when he tried to apply to study there at some point in his young life. But I'm still glad that what he did in terms of his art, the art looks basic, but you can still see the effort he put in it. You can still see the principles of art are applied, and he understands perspective. Sometimes not very well, but he represents it quite well, that the average person will not notice that there are some flaws or errors in the way he depicts something. But generally, in terms of his color scheme, I think he is quite talented indeed. Well, I can see the relationship between me and Adolf Hitler in terms of judging art very, very critically. Adolf Hitler had an ideology that all abstract art is considered degenerate, and he would organize galleries in Germany which consisted of these degenerate pieces. So art which was made by artists like maybe Kandinsky or Malevich or any other expressionist artist at the time. When I look at the Twitter art or Tumblr art online, I actually do wish that we would have this gallery again, And I'm planning, as a matter of fact, to make a few videos dedicated to such pieces, showcasing the best degenerate art I can find and having them presented in a very elaborate video form.
Do you make music for your cartoons by yourself?
No, I usually hire people. If I were to be a politician, it would probably be best if it was in America or Canada, because Canada has a lot of problems right now. And I believe I could be able to help them with my art and comics.
Are you a racist?
Delivery.
Oh, thanks.
Hello, Kitty. It's for my Chinese friends today for dinner. Hello there.
Well, I wouldn't say so. A lot of people have accused me of being racist, but that is not true at all. For example, I have many black friends. I like basketball, I like KFC. I also used to watch a lot of anime and play a lot of video games, which made me learn Japanese. Watashi wa zainichi ga daisuki desu.
After the family drama between my parents was over and I was living in Estonia for good, I was sent to a Russian-speaking kindergarten, as Ukrainian is similar to Russian language, so my mom thought it would be easier for me to integrate. In kindergarten I started learning Estonian and English. Thanks to ritualistic daily viewing of foreign cartoons, I was pretty good at picking up English sentences and words from a very young age. Then years later, as I was in the 7th grade, I started taking extra German classes in school, and by that time my German vocabulary was pretty decent thanks to watching dubbed German cartoons. But why Germany, you may ask? Isn't English enough? Well, I always loved Germany and German people. I used to go to a few volunteer camps in Germany during my teen years to help the people in small towns and villages with various tasks. So things like building fences for farm animals, cleaning the rivers, and other local community stuff. Germany looked very clean and pure at the time, so I wanted to live there one day. But looking at the country now, I guess I'm lucky I never moved there. Before starting my university course, I began learning Japanese in 2008. It was because I wanted to try working in Japanese animation industry. I later went to study in a Japanese university, and after I graduated, I went to a few anime studios in Osaka to see what's it like working there. Unfortunately, the conditions were not that great, as the deadlines were insane and the pay was minuscule. Animators were basically living in the studio most of the week. Still, I'm glad I learned Japanese, as I got to meet some of the nicest people on the planet because of it. Kids, if you want to learn a new language, watch untranslated foreign cartoons on a daily basis.
So I would say I'm very cultured because I get along with a lot of people around the world. People like the Jews, black people, Japanese, feminists, women, pretty much everyone.
Well, sometimes. But then I remember that I have Jewish blood flowing through me thanks to my dad's family side, and that I'm circumcised.
I think the feminist art is very predictable, and you can tell the message behind it right away, obviously. So I would say that of course it depends what wave of feminism you were talking about. If you're talking about the third wave feminism, that is probably the worst possible art that can be produced by them. But of course the first wave of feminism and the second wave of feminism were much more decent and much more thoughtful and much more exquisite. If you're a first wave or second wave feminist, then you still have a chance to produce something good. Otherwise, don't even bother. So I don't take any drugs, but I did used to take antidepressants like SSRIs. So the reason was because I was having a hard time falling asleep, and I decided that it's time to try and take and see what happens. I've been getting a lot of death threats and harassment since around August of 2020, so it's been around 1 year almost, and I would say I'm quite used to it by now, even though at first it was quite a new experience, to say the least. To have police calls from the people who are sending these fake accusations about me, and then I get, you know, calls from my boss or employer, the police, and some of the friends tend to ask me things which I didn't do. But over time you get used to it, you know.
Fan art, it's always fan art. Every time I see art of my characters, it gives me a sign that people support me and my actions. I love my fans.
I don't consider tracing to be any near the level of tracing in illustration. So I don't consider it to be a theft if you are not hiding it, if you are open about it, if you're openly public about what you trace and when you use traced material, then there's nothing wrong with that, because to me it's the same concept as using an image in a video that doesn't belong to you, like using a photo, a meme, a clip, sound, anything from an outside source which doesn't belong to you. If you take an image that exists already, you put it in your video, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily stealing that, you're transforming that image. The commentary community online on YouTube, they get this very, very wrong information about what tracing is.
My detractors' general idea is that tracing is the worst sin possible.
In animation, you create the whole environment. You don't just trace one illustration. You have to create movement, which requires space. You need timing. You need a lot of different principles that make animation work. I would say I don't approve of tracing in illustration, but I'm perfectly fine when it's on the YouTube video where you're not hiding the fact that you do trace.